Alright, hey there guys, just going to go through my prophecy deck list as I promised a couple of days ago. I'm mostly going to do this because I've seen a lot of builds lately from YCSs and online that are just really bad, or beyond terrible even. They run cards that don't really further the deck's purpose, or they're 3s and 4s out of 10 and then neglecting cards that are 7s and 8s out of 10. There's really no room in this deck for suboptimal choices. Deck space is so tight. And I just feel that running suboptimal cards, things like, Spellbook Star Hall and even things like Apprentice Magician, they're not good enough. So I'm going to go through my deck list and what I think is pretty competitive. So I'll give you the deck list first, and then after that I'll explain some of the choices. So for monsters, you got your 3 High Priestess of Prophecy, 3 Spellbook Magician of Prophecy, 2 Temperance of Prophecy, 1 Justice of Prophecy, 1 Stoic of Prophecy, 3 Breaker the Magical Warrior, 2 Tragodia, and 2 Card Trooper, and that'll be 17. For spells, you've got 3 Spellbook of Secrets, 2 the Grand Spellbook Tower, 2 Spellbook of Power, 2 Spellbook of Life, 2 Spellbook of Wisdom, 1 Spellbook of Eternity, 2 Potted Duality, and then your staple Dark Hole, Heavy Storm, and Monster Reborn. And then for the traps, you've got 2 Solemn Warning, 2 Mirror Force, 2 Call of the Haunted, 1 Solemn Judgment, and 1 Spiritual Water AoE, and that makes a total of 42, which I haven't found to be an issue given how fast this deck thins through itself, and also the fact that you're drawing twice with Spellbook Tower. So now I'll go through some of the, now I'll go through the choices and why I'm running cards the way I am. 3 High Priestess. This card is too good to run at any less than 3. It's the boss monster of the deck. It's the reason the deck is playable, so you can't run it at less than 3. I wouldn't even try. 3 Spellbook Magician of Prophecy. I've seen a few people running this at 2, and I don't really see why that's wise. If you dig, for a Spellbook of Secrets, you can cut through 2 cards at once, if not more, in a single turn. And it's just a mini Stratos. Overlaying for things like Garchi can be pretty cool as well if you can pull that off, but essentially it's just to thin your deck, to get your engine going, to get your spellbooks for High Priestess, to dig for towers, and it's too good. I'm running 2 Temperance and 1 Justice. Temperance is obviously really good because it's instant Priestess, but I found that the +1 effect of Justice is just as good, and if not better, and having it as an option to search for with Stoic was just good. Obviously you don't want to run more than the 3, so the 3 total, because that's going to clog far too much, but having both options was just the better way to go in my opinion. And then onto your sort of support monsters, the 3 Breaker. I'm not a huge fan of Mystical Space Typhoon right now, so I'm running Breaker instead. It's a spellcaster, it's a monster, it's got a decent sized body, and it's also an MST. I found that MST against decks like Agents and Dragons, and I just don't hugely like MST this format, so this card just replaces that. There's also obscure things with Breaker, like Breaker and Spellbook of Power isn't out to almost game over cards like Archlord Christia, and then it also beats over things like Master Hyperion, Red Earth Darkness Metal Dragon, and things like that. That's also the reason that I'm running this over Lila, or one of the reasons. Lila isn't an out to those cards with Spellbook of Power, and Breaker also allows you to destroy a back row on summon, activate power, and then attack, whereas Lila has to go to defense. You won't always get those plays off, and so your Breaker was just the best utility monster back row destruction I found for the deck. 2 Tragodia. Tragodia is one of my favorite cards this format, and in this deck it's no exception. You'll probably never drop a Tragodia that's any less than 2/4 on your opponent's turn, and it can go anywhere from 36 to 42 on your turn. You can steal your opponent's monsters, you can overlay for Big Eye, and if you're in America you can make the Gustav cannon. You can't make that here in Australia, unfortunately. Well, perhaps fortunately, because that card's pretty nutty, but yeah, for sure it gives you a lot of options, especially in the States. It just allows you to control the tempo of the game by defending or just swinging with a hammer. Trooper, this card is absolutely insane, and I don't see why all builds aren't running it. A lot of the time I found that I was choosing between my my Grand Spellbook Tower and my High Priestess, and which effect I wanted to use in one turn. And so Trooper sort of mitigates this. It puts your spellbooks in the grave so you can use both. It puts your Priestess in the grave so you can reuse it with Life, Call the Haunted, put your Temperances and your Justices in the grave for the same reason. Milling a Stoic is obviously amazing as well because it doesn't miss timing, or you can't miss timing with Trooper's attack. So yeah, it's really good in that regard, but it's also an out to Thunder King. It's a +1 over Thunder King. Thunder King can be a really big problem for this deck. It shuts down your searches, which get your engine going. So any card that furthers the deck's main goal by milling the spellbooks, milling the monsters, and also +1s over a really big problem, it's too good not to run. And so I'd definitely be playing the 2. And that's sort of the reasoning for the monster lineup. And if you move on to the spells, the 3 Secrets, I don't really think this needs too much explanation. Secrets is amazing. It digs for any spellbook. It also digs for... So he digs for any spellbook spell, but it also digs for your Magician of Prophecy, so it's just too good. 2, the Grand Spellbook Tower. Running more than 2 is really, really cloggy and very unnecessary. You can reuse this with Priestess and Spellbook of Eternity. You can search it whenever you need it. I found that running 2 hasn't been an issue, whereas running 3 was. So with the searchability and the recyclability of this deck, you don't need 3. It's one of the only spellbooks you never ever want to have multiples of. And then if you move on to the spellbook Power, Life, and Wisdom, I'll do these all at once because they have very similar explanations. All of these, in their own right, are absolutely amazing. They will have really, really good effects, but you don't need more than 2. All 2 dice is guaranteed that you get them. They're all searchable with Secrets, with Magician of Prophecy. They're all recyclable with Tower and with Eternity, so you don't need to run more than 2. It's also room issues. There's already such a big problem with room that running more of cards that you don't need to max out on just became, I guess, irrelevant. And then Spellbook of Eternity, I'm only running 1. This card's pretty cool. If you have Priestess, Tower, Secrets, and Eternity, you have constant fuel for both every turn by banishing and shuffling back. So that combo is really cool. It's also cool just to get back towers if they kill them, and that's why you only need to run the 2 tower. The 2 duality, this deck does special summon a lot, but you also have a lot of plays with your Troopers, with your Breaker, keeping Tragodia in hand, summoning your Spellbook Magician, and even just riding a High Priestess from the following turn. The duality lets you dig for your combo pieces. Obviously, all the spellbooks, for the most part, only work with spellcasters, and the spellcasters work best with the spellbooks, so duality lets you hit those 2-card combos faster, and it just digs for outs to your opponent's field if you need them. And then onto the staples, Dark Hole, Heavy Storm, Monster Reborn. Monster Reborn is a really, really good card, in case anyone doubted that. After playing GK for 6 months, I basically forgot that this card existed, and didn't even own a copy until yesterday. So after playing Monster Reborn in a tournament yesterday for the first time in a while, I sort of lament the fact that I'd forgotten about it for so long. So yeah, don't forget Monster Reborn just because you play GK and it's irrelevant for that deck. And if you move on to the traps, the Solemn Warnings, the Mirror Forces, and the Judgment, they all have very, very similar explanations. For the most part, I've seen a lot of builds are trying to run a very sort of turbo-based deck with reasoning and cards like that, and I don't think that's the way to go with this deck. This deck is never going to out-aggressive any other deck in this format, really. Wind-ups with Magician Shark, Chaos Dragons, Agents, Water, pretty much anything is going to out-aggressive this deck. This deck just can't put damage on the board as fast as those decks can. So I wouldn't try and play their game, and that's why I'm running a decent trap lineup, is to try and get past those early turns. If you can get past the first few turns and start resolving Spellbook Tower, start resolving +1s through Priestess, and keep your +1s going through Breaker, you're going to be in a really good position to win that game. And so for me, there's no point trying to run this deck to a purpose it's just not going, or wasn't intended for. This deck is best played as somewhat of a control-based deck, because like I said, it just does generate those +1s, and your opponent won't be able to deal with them over the course of multiple turns. And so if you can get past turn 2, turn 3, you're going to be in a really good position to win that game. Obviously, those early turns are where your deck struggles the most, because other decks just have more power plays than you're going to have in those initial turns. So the Warnings, the Mirror Force, the Judgment, they help regulate your opponent in that regard. Mirror Force is also an out to things like Thunder King, Naturia Beast, and just cards that can sort of shut you down, and that's why I'm main decking them. It's no fun losing to Naturia Beast when you play against Samurai, and just absolutely have no outs to that card. The Call of the Haunted, this card's there mostly obviously for Trooper, but obviously also because you have such easy and regular access to High Priestess. So Call the Haunted can bring her back for +1s. You can chain it to MST for Trooper, for Stoic, for +1s that way. But the entire deck just functions really, really well as a unit in that you're going to be putting your Priestess in the grave either through searching for it with Temperance or milling it with Trooper. So Call the Haunted is always live. You can also bring back things like Tragodia, which will always be huge. So Call the Haunted was far too good not to run. I found 3 to be too cloggy, and so yeah, it's down at 2, and it'll probably stay that way. And then the Spiritual Water Out. I really, really like this card. I'm testing it at the moment. I might go up to 2, just because having it with Stoic and having it with Magician is really, really good. Regulating your opponent's hand or removing their options or their power plays is, like, there's no other word for it. It's amazing. Most decks this format are fairly combo orientated, so if you can discard one part of the combo, you make another part of the combo dead that might already be in their hand. So you can essentially get rid of, you know, two or more cards, or make the other 2 dead. And yeah, that's the deck list. I haven't given a side or an extra, mostly because this video is already pretty long. However, for the side deck, you want to be siding things like Shadow Mirror, because Inzectors are a really bad matchup. Fossil Diner for things like Naturia Beast and Xian. For the extra deck, you're going to be looking at things like Big Eye, obviously, and just generic Synchro and Exceed options. Spellbook Life changes your level, so you've always got a lot of sort of fancy options depending on what you bring back. You don't have any tuners, but you do have Reborn, so it might be worth just including some generic Synchros like Catasta and Armory Arm, just because they can steal games or help survive games you would have otherwise lost. But yeah, other than that, that's the deck list. At the moment, I wouldn't change anything. It's testing really, really well. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, just let me know. Other than that, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Dislike if you didn't like the video, but leave me a comment as to why. And yeah, cheers guys.